Avery, who shows this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points, joined on this, on my end of this here Zoom call. It is gross. It is like misty outside. It's going to rain for the next 12 hours or so, on and off. And then it's supposed to get down to the 20s. So we might be stuck in our houses for the next 48 hours or so. That's what it's like on my end of this thing on this ugly Tuesday afternoon. Harrison Fagan, how are you doing?
Better than that. It's a little chillier here today. It's getting down to 60. So,
Whoa, man.
Yeah. I did,
right?
almost had to pop a jacket on for the show, but decided, I was like, I think it'll be warm enough in the office.
You seem like the kind of guy who would never manage the temperature in your living space. No AC, no heater. You just raw dog the weather.
No, I have you are mostly correct, but I do keep an AC unit in my bedroom because I can, if it gets super hot, I can't sleep. There's no way. And then my wife doesn't get to sleep, which would end in divorce. So we have an AC unit.
Well, that was the other thing, was that if you I feel like if you had it, if you
I'm
weren't
definitely
with me,
you just put a jacket on.
I definitely like wearing hoodies around the house. That in my my old age.
We were watching TV just now, and she was using a heating pad just to be warmer. Not any medical
it's
issues.
60.
Yeah, well, that's cold for us Californians.
I hope you guys come visit one of these times.
It is also, to be fair, it's probably a little cooler in that room because the sun doesn't really hit it. But I mean, it's not cold, but it's not 60. It's probably
colder.
All
right. Today on the show, we are not going to be talking about the weather for the whole time. We're going to be talking about
what
a
else
fun
is there
little
to
rumor.
Talk about?
Yeah. Well, we're in that weird 48, 72 hour space where normally there's just nothing between the All-Star break and the NBA. The NBA, in all of its wisdom, schedules a week-long break after the Super Bowl, which seems totally wise.
Well, the guy, it's hey, there's all the guys have their Super Bowl parties. It's you got to get through a couple lethargic games after that. It's hey, ate too many wings on Sunday, but I got to play against the Jazz on Tuesday. You get through it, and then it's you get that nice little break.
With the NBA runs scared all year. They have moved away from Thursday night, content because of Thursday night football. They schedule really light Sundays during football season. They're even kind of light Saturday nights too from time to time because of college football. Finally, football is over. And the NBA is this is much more like it. Let's not play. We're good.
It really is. I think, to me, I don't know how much all-star stuff we're going to do, because I'm sure that you've already talked about it a ton on the feed and, everywhere. And, to be honest, everyone listening to this has heard the, mandatory Monday, the all-star game is broken and I hate it. And why does it exist podcast? But I do think that, to me, is the most cogent criticism of the all-star game is why do you have this sort of disaster, this event that no one really thinks is the highest level showcase of your sport as your big showcase coming out of NFL season when you're finally no longer running scared from football? The break thing, that's whatever to me. It's your season is going to work out how it works out in terms of timing and without moving the season around. I mean, I guess maybe they could have the break during Super Bowl week or something like that. But then it's how do you get the all-star events in? So it's I understand all of those logistical things, but it's why are you having this game that the only prevailing narrative and everyone's takeaway from it is this thing is horrible, how do we fix it, as you're big hey, football's over, don't you want to check out the NBA? And then it's yeah, LeBron is out an hour before the game
for
the all-star game. just, you know, for all of you casuals who are like mad about how frequently NBA players play, this is what we're going to do on this big showcase. Again, I'm not like blaming LeBron or anything, but it's like, it's a perfect encapsulation of like what people don't like about the NBA.
Yeah, right. Like anytime I mention what I do for a living, especially out here in suburban Texas, but like anytime I mention what I do and I mention how I cover the NBA, the constant thing is like, yeah, I stopped watching forever ago because like I just hated not knowing who was going to play on any given night, and then like on a tentpole event for the league,
and then to forget
LeBron's
LeBron,
like,
10 minutes before Anthony Edwards leaks that he's both cold and has a sore, that he has a cold and a sore groin. Like they couldn't even get the reason that he was being held out straight.
Just say you're hungover.
It was like, just say you're not playing because LeBron's not playing. Like,
yeah, right. Well, like there was also, they did my running theory is that like LeBron didn't want to like lower himself to playing against like the G League team.
Yep.
Because if
100%.
Team LeBron lost to the G League team, then that would be a really ugly. Yeah, and they almost did. Like he would not want to like have anything to do with that. So like he saw what the schedule was like. Hold on, what? You had me doing what? No, fuck this. My ankle hurts. And
which, to be fair, it probably does. You know, he is over the age of 35, so I assume his ankle hurts all the time, even under good circumstances. I
saw a meme the other day. It was absolutely perfect. It was like waking up in your 30s is waking up with a hangover, realizing, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't drink last night. This is just how I feel all the time. And LeBron is now in his 40s, so like it only gets worse. But yeah, so anyway, I don't really want to spend much, like if any time at all, about like All-Star Weekend. It is what it is. I think I've arrived at the place where I think All-Star Weekend is just going to be Saturday Night Live as it exists right now, where almost nobody watches Saturday Night Live from start to finish. Everybody checks out like, all right, which skits went viral? Was the musical guest really good? Was the monologue really good? And then like that's all that you tune in for. I think that's essentially what All-Star Weekend is going to be, where it's like, all right, how was the dunk contest? How was the 3-point contest? And they're talking about this one-on-one thing, and it's like
oh, Mac McClung did a front flip over a Kia. Nice. I got to check that out on TikTok later. You know,
I went a little hard probably on Mac McClung in hindsight. Like, it's not his fault. He is like single-handedly holding up this stupid event. Because
unfortunately for him, he is like the Michael Jordan of dunk contests or LeBron James of dunk contests, and just not of overall basketball. You know, it's just he has a very specific skill set that translates itself to theatrical dunks, which is that he is short, white, and has an insane vertical leaping ability.
But I think I'd take it a step, but not further, a different step or a different approach to it. It's not Mac McClung's fault that LeBron and all of the stars subsequently have decided, nah, not for us. It's not good for our brand to lose that event.
And it's like, and that's why I'm so unconvinced that this NBA one-on-one tournament thing is going to happen. I will believe that when I see it. If we're like, this is going to be one of these things where they're like, oh yeah, we're getting, you know, the NBA is back. They came up with this new event, and then it's like by the time that we get there, it's like, well, like NBC analyst Jamal Crawford is actually going to participate as part of like a documentary series that's going to air on Peacock. And then I think, you know, we got Mac McClung, 3-time dunk contest champion. He's going to join. Lonnie Walker, get excited. Playoff Lonnie.
Yeah. It's going to be you against me. Like, it's going to be like, hey, have you ever wanted to see your favorite, your like 7th favorite player on your favorite team take on your least favorite beat reporter? Tune in Saturday night. Like,
okay, that's a compelling watch, to be honest. I think you might have just invented an incredibly great all-star event. It's like, you know, one player that you'll get some star participation, you know. One player gets to play against their team's beat writers.
Yep. Yeah, it's right there. It's right there, guys. And you don't even need stars to do it.
It's like Jovan's going through the stanchion. Sorry.
LeBron's, you know how much people would pay to watch me get dunked on by literally any NBA player out there, period.
Like, oh man, Dan's really having a hard time staying in front of Cam Reddish today, you know?
No, what do you think would be more embarrassing there? trying to score on Cam Reddish or trying to defend Cam Reddish?
100% trying to score, because it's like he's just like a different level of like
He's like
athlete. It's just like
6'8",
you would not be able
built
to get
like
a
a
shot
cat.
off. Like I have my
No.
criticisms
Oh,
of Cam
fuck
Reddish,
no.
but yeah, that's what I mean. Like
Absolutely
none of
not.
us would be able to even get a shot past him.
No.
You know, it's just
No, like that's one of my favorite. It's kind of like saying, like, could you wrestle a grizzly bear? Like, what would be more embarrassing, being thrown into a tank with a hungry great white shark, or getting thrown into a forest with a hungry grizzly bear? Both would end roughly the same way. Like,
I'm going grizzly just because I'm not a good swimmer. So it's like at least there, maybe I can run away. You know, it's
ooh, man. Yeah, I guess like you could try to climb. You might last one extra second.
or you know, it's like, hey, you get up, you get scary. I've heard that's the good strategy.
Have you seen the TikTok? There's a TikTok that I love where the original video is of this guy biking in the woods, and he turns his head. He has a camera like mounted to his helmet, and he turns his head, and there's a grizzly bear running like off in the distance toward him, like kind of chasing him.
Yeah.
And somebody put is it Vanessa Carlton? Take him away down south. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, it's the Million Miles by the one that Jimmy Butler sings in the commercial. But anyway, so like it's like wearing my noise canceling headphones through the woods, and it's like this guy is like just clearly screams like ah,
Yeah.
and there's just bear chasing him. I'll try to find it at some point here and either show it to you on or off the air. But anyway, let's move on. Yes, it is. Thank you, Malcolm.
Speaking of grizzly bears,
yeah, Grizzlies star Ja Morant found his name in the headlines today by way of Howard Beck, who I'm going to clear this up with him because he's supposed to come on the show here in the next couple of weeks. This is the quote from Howard Beck. I'm constantly checking in with executives around trade deadline, around like, okay, what we saw, what we didn't see, what's next. And in this league, you're always on the lookout for the next wave of stars that are going to get dealt, right? Somebody out of the blue said, keep an eye on Ja Morant this summer. I'm just saying it's one of those things I'm kind of keeping an eye on if it were to flame out early, or if they were to flame out early, they being the Memphis Grizzlies. And my theory on what's going on there, and we're going to talk about this, and then, I think this kind of gives us a good segue into how I think the Lakers are going to come by their second star. And then on the back half of the show, we'll talk about the second half of the season expectations. Also subscribe, rate, review, blah, blah, blah. All right. So my thoughts on this were that this is a result of the CBA and how it used to be, right, Harrison? It used to be your best player and your second best player were just maxed out. That was just, it didn't matter how good your team was.
It was just what you did. Yeah.
It was just like status quo, modus operandi. It was,
we can't afford to upset these guys, so we have to max them.
Right. And so, and that's how it was for decades, the entirety basically of the time that I followed the NBA. That's how it went. There was barely even any negotiation. It was like, all right, what's the max that we can give Powell? That's what Powell was getting. And that was on like a really, really good team. That's how you arrive at like Bradley Beal having some of the worst contract situations in the history of the sport, is because
I would say that's more of a development of like the 2010s almost, is like where everyone gets a max. It doesn't matter. Like if you're a franchise player, you are a high draft pick, you can't insult them. You have to give them the max. Right.
Well, the reason I use Bradley Beal as the example here is because he was the second best player on those John Wall, Bradley Beal teams.
Yeah.
And he just always got the max. And like, it was just like, that's how, and there was no negotiation.
When he was the best player on terrible Wizards teams, they're like, you're going to be our Kobe. And then they maxed him out, gave him a no trade clause, and then traded him the next year.
Yeah, right. And so I think with this new CBA and what has become, in essence, a hard cap, you have MPJ, a great example, Bashir. A $40 million contract to MPJ that was signed in the previous CBA, because back then you just gave those contracts out.
Yeah.
That's how it went.
It's just like we can't afford to upset him. Someone else will offer it to him, and so like we can't risk losing him for nothing. And now there's more of a calculus of like, is it better to lose someone for nothing versus to pay them this amount of money? You know, and you're seeing a lot of teams do that calculus. Brandon Ingram getting moved at the deadline because basically the Pelicans decided that's not worth it. You know,
Luka.
like to some degree, Luka. You know, on the higher end, where the Mavs are just like, yeah, we don't trust this guy to stay healthy on a max contract, so we're trading him. And whether you think that's insane or not, most people clearly do. You know, that is the calculus that is leading to a lot of these decisions.
Well, and yeah, that's how. Well, I want to back up a quick second here. Teams looked at this new CBA and how strict it is at like the second apron, which is now basically a hard cap for the vast majority of the teams. And I think
probably.
Well, I think eventually it'll be 30, because we've seen how it's gone for Phoenix. I think, you know,
the teams that have blasted through it, not exactly like, you know, making great argument to do that as a strategy.
Like you have the Celtics who blasted right through it and they won a championship as a result. But I bet you there are so many owners who are looking at Phoenix and it's like, thank God that has gone so disastrously.
Matt Ishbia plant from the owners to, you know, show fans that they're like, all right, buddy, this is your new owner hazing ritual. You just got to destroy your team for like 10 years and we'll approve your buyership. And then that way fans are like, well, we don't want you to spend all this money because look at what happened when Matt Ishbia
look at what happened over there. Yeah. I bet Matt Ishbia and Jeannie Buss are super popular at the owners meetings at this point. But anyway, so the players, we're seeing this whiplash, right? Where you saw the reaction from all of the stars when Luka got traded. Every single superstar was like, whoa. Shit.
Like how many guys really think that they're better than him? You know, that that couldn't happen to them. Like there's a couple guys that probably think so, and more than are actually better than him, but there's not many. You know, even a lot of these alpha stars, like if they're being honest in their heart of hearts, are kind of like, oh no.
Right. And I think one of the sounds that you heard there was everybody realizing and like texting their agent as quickly as they could, hey, are there going to be no more maxes? Because it used to be under previous CBAs, the greatest market inefficiency was the best player in the league having their contract capped, right? So like if you had
not
LeBron,
even the best player, like the best 10 players having
maybe
their
even
contract.
But like I mean I still think like the better the player, the greater the inefficiency.
But I mean like it was an inefficiency for almost everyone who got the max. I mean not everyone, but most guys, if they could have went out onto the open market within that CBA environment where the only penalty was like $1 for dollar tax, and you were only restricted by bird rights and those sorts of things, like, you know, guys were that was a market inefficiency that you could artificially cap LeBron at, you know, $16 million at one point or $20 million or whatever, you know, back in the day.
Yeah. And I think to a certain extent that inefficiency still exists. Although I think it's probably going to dissipate because now there are just going to be fewer players who actually get that amount of money, right?
Yeah.
Like, now we're going to reach a point here where it used to be 30, maybe like 45, maybe even 60 players would get like the max that they could possibly get every time. Now I think we're going to arrive at a place here where, and by the way, like there would be 60 guys who would get the max that they could possibly sign for, and only about 10 or so of those players actually deserving full on every single penny that you could give that player from purely a basketball standpoint. By the way, I want to be clear.
I'd say under the old CBA, I think it's more than 10, but
yeah, I mean,
just because again, like the only penalty is how much you're willing to pay. But
like
that's really how much it costs your it used to be that we would criticize the Lakers for being skinflint, when they would not spend money to keep someone like Alex Caruso or whatever, because it's there's literally no basketball reason to not do that. You are just not paying money. And so under that environment, why not just pay for good players? It's there's more than 10 that are worth that in that environment. Now, I think there's an argument to be made about how many guys really are actually worth that max when it so artificially hamstrings you in all these other ways.
Not artificially, actually hamstrings you. It used to artificially. Now it's actually, right?
Yeah, it's it's a made up rule. They're well, we came up with these rules for how we can spend our money. It's
yeah, that's fair.
We're we are all Randian capitalists in real life, but I don't know about paying these guys $80 million a year.
Yeah,
that seems a little steep to me. I don't can they really be worth it when my team is only worth $6 billion?
Here's what I would say, though.
Playing. I mean, really, fans are showing up to buy concessions from me, the owner, right? It's
hey, who gets to hold the trophy first when their team wins?
It's my brilliant business mind that created the NBA. It's
so. What I would say, though, is that there were technically maybe 10, 15, 20 is pushing it guys who were worthy of max contracts before. My only pushback to that would be there was a reason either Shaq, Kobe, or Duncan were on the championship teams for 15 years straight.
Yeah.
Because only those guys were all of those guys had their contracts. Well, Shaq to a lesser degree because he was from a previous non-max contract existence. And then they introduced the max contract.
Well, by the time he got to the Heat, there was a max.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was a max when he got to the Lakers. I think
no, there was not. There was no.
He signed a huge contract.
I think the max contract came into effect it was based. If I remember correctly, it was because of the Kevin Garnett deal the next year. So Shaq wasn't the total impetus, but he raised the bar, and then KG got a huge contract, and then they're okay, we cannot be doing this. We need to artificially deflate the value of the workforce. Okay.
Well, because where they were heading in their minds was that stars would get $150 million contracts and there would be no middle class. Right.
Yeah.
Which
NBA trickle down economics. I think it's worked out great.
It's worked out everywhere else.
Middle class. I think the NBA's middle class is thriving. It's definitely not stars and minimums on most.
Every new CBA just does better and better and better. So the anyway, so to bring this back to Ja Morant, and we're going to see this with every borderline max player, and I think, and to be absolutely clear, this is just from a basketball standpoint because Ja Morant, the entity, does make
more than a max,
way more than a max to the Memphis Grizzlies, and LeBron James is worth way more than a max to the Lakers, and so on and so forth. I'm just talking strictly from a basketball. If we were to look at this purely through the term you used, which I think is a good one here, Randian lenses, where we have to every Lonnie Walker, I think is another kind of as a quick detour. Lonnie Walker's deadline that he needed to be signed by was February 18th. And he was never going to be picked up any earlier than that because every day that he was in Europe made him a more effective and efficient pickup than if he was picked up months ago because his contract prorates and he was always going to sign a prorated minimum contract. And so if anybody was ever going to pick him up, it was going to be at the very last day that they could because he, every single $10,000 or so was going to bring you closer and closer and closer to that second apron. We saw it earlier
I
this
always
year.
say, Anthony, what's the most valuable thing for a basketball team? No, not could Lonnie Walker have helped the Sixers sort of stay above water the last couple of weeks. It's how much is Josh Harris paying? And, I'm excited that he got a better deal by waiting 2 weeks. I think that was really prudent.
Well, we saw this earlier in the season with who's the good shooter that the Knicks were they literally leaked. We're going to wait a couple weeks. Matt Ryan, but it was also, there was a shooting guard who used to play for the
Shamet?
Clippers.
Landry
Shamet, yeah.
Yeah.
Shamet. Like they literally leaked. Yeah, if we wait like 3 weeks or so, it saves us $500,000.
Yeah, they're like, no,
against the luxury tax.
we just drafted him in the G League draft just to sort of stash him there, but yeah, we're gonna sign him in a couple weeks when it's cheaper.
Exactly, and all of this is to say, like, if obviously they aren't going to pinch pennies to the same extent with the Jaws of the world and stuff like that, where they're going to wait so long to sign his max or whatever. But I do think I think Ja Morant is a good example of, weirdly, the Grizzlies aren't significantly worse when he doesn't play. And then on top of it, you had all of the off-court stuff as well. And just purely, again, from a basketball standpoint, the Memphis Grizzlies might be looking at John like, I'm not sure he's worth the max. Like, if we could have Ja,
like, imagine if
something Nico Harrison, less than the max.
Imagine if Nico Harrison was GM of that team.
I'd be a Laker.
He would have given him a lifetime extension because he's a Nike guy. That is the answer to that.
That's actually true. It's probably. But like, I think somebody like Luka, if we're going to continue with this analysis here, and I know this is very in the weeds and this is very CBA heavy, and this isn't like the most exciting shit, I promise, stick with us, because how this helps the Lakers is just right around the corner. But because it's already helped the Lakers.
We're only 26 minutes in, okay? Just bear with us another couple.
Thing is, it's already helped the Lakers, and I think it's only going to continue helping the Lakers, because the Lakers lucked out, as the max that they can pay Luka is significantly lower than the max that the Dallas Mavericks could have paid Luka. And then the Mavericks weren't comfortable paying Luka that amount of money. And
he lost what, like $80 to $100 million?
I think it's like 116 mil. Yeah.
And like, people always like inflate. It's like probably less than that, because it's like there's probably like an extra year they could have given him, that it's like he'll get the max that year probably. So it's like not actually that much, but it's still somewhere, north of 50 million at the very least, which is a lot of money.
Well, that was like part of, everybody was like, man, Luka looks shocked at like how, at his intro presser, people kept on saying, wow, Luka looks really kind of bummed to be there. And I'm like, he looks like somebody who just lost $100 million. That's how I would look like. And so anyway, I do think that the market inefficiency here moving forward, and it runs antithetically to what was intended with these max contracts.
I love this take.
Is that if you didn't draft a player and therefore can only pay that player less than the team that drafted him, you'll be able to trade for some of these really, really good players who may not be worth max contracts, but I think you'll be able to get really bleeping good players who are just a tier below being worthy of a max contract. And if you already have one of those max players, as the Lakers happen to have now, you can now pair your actual max player with somebody who is just slightly worse than a max player. And holy shit, now you're immediately a championship contender. And I think, and this is how it always goes. As you try to legislate parity,
yes,
you always make it harder on the teams that you're trying to help, because that's exactly what's happening here.
I was going to say, I just like, we could circle back to your point about how this helps the Lakers in a second, but the unintended consequences of this, and this does tie into how it helps the Lakers. It's very funny, because you have all these owners, like among the richest, most successful people in their field. They're like, we got to get together and we got to make it so that it's easier for all of us to have equal teams every single year. And what we can't have is teams like the Lakers spending a whole bunch of money. So we need to artificially, and the Clippers and, these coastal elitist teams spending all this money. And, when they already have the geographical advantages and all that. So, what we need to do? We need to basically hard cap what they can spend. But what we're going to do? We're going to hard cap every team. so that even the ones that don't make as much money still, have these massive penalties for keeping their own guys. And then also, how do we keep guys from going to the Lakers? Well, what if we made their teams able to offer them $100 more million? Then they'd be able to keep them, right? The guys couldn't say no to that. And then the teams are like, well, wait, that's too much money. We can't afford that. We got to
operate under the hard cap now.
Yeah.
Right. Wait a second. So you just, because again, like you said,
you're like, I love dropping rakes for me to step on. I think this time it's not going to hit me in the face.
Well, here's where I'm not going to get political here. This is just basic economics, but you have these titans of industry who know this is a game system, by the way. You have so many billionaires now that own these teams, and they have benefited from the fact that they have more resources than everybody else. And then they all now they have to compete directly with each other. And what they're realizing is that, oh shit, that's right. It's really hard to operate and compete if I have less resources than everybody else. Meanwhile, they're telling everybody else, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. We're doing great. And
then they show up to the owner meeting and they're like, Steve Ballmer has more money than me.
Exactly.
You have to redistribute his wealth to us.
Right. You know how hard it is to compete with the Lakers? They have the coast. They have great weather. Oh my God.
We should get some sort of handout for existing in less advantageous circumstances. Like some sort of revenue sharing to make all of our revenues more equal. Like we take it from the higher earners and we distribute it to the lesser earners.
It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. How they have, like, by way of competing against each other in professional sports, have basically given up the secret to everybody that actually,
what if we had some sort of money to ensure the welfare of all of us?
What if there was a central presiding entity that would make sure that everybody has equal opportunity at competing in this league? What would that maybe just maybe let's come up with a constitution, or let's come up with a document that would like indicate to everybody that we all should have equal chance at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And some of us, if some of us just happen to be born into situations that are a little more advantageous to us.
In the case of the
some
Lakers,
of us
literally born.
Yeah, that's right. Like some of us should maybe, I don't know, support others of us who are in less fortunate situations.
And meanwhile, like if you it's like Tillman Fertitta and like these owners and whatever, they see no problem with this. But like if you explain to them the concept of socialism, they like jump across the table and try to fight you.
Right. Well, like, because they were messing with their actual money.
Yeah, exactly.
Not this toy, not this play toy that they have. All right. Anyway, let's move on from that before people pick up what we're actually saying.
From Anthony and Harrison's Capitalism Corner.
All right, so where I said this was going to help the Lakers is because they now have, statistically, one of those 5 to 10 guys who are definitely worth a max contract. Certainly the max that the Lakers can give him, even if Dallas didn't think he was worth the super duper max that he could have gotten in Dallas. But he's definitely worth the amount of money that the Lakers can give him. That, by the way, is why the Lakers, because now the Lakers are kind of in the same boat as far as like what they can offer compared to other teams. And that's why the Lakers immediately moved to trade for Mark Williams, who, by the way, I don't think they meant to keep. But anyway, so like they immediately moved to prove to Luka, look, we're for real. We will do whatever it takes to keep you here, because he is. And I 5-time first team All-NBA, before the age of 25 or at the age of 25.
He's one of the only guys in the league on like a 5-time All-NBA streak. And he's like basically the only one under 30.
And perennial MVP candidate. This guy like raced through the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like he's just an incredible basketball player. And the Lakers now have
He
him.
beat the Timberwolves so bad that they traded for Julius Randle to avoid the tax.
Rudy Gobert may never be the same.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think he's still suffering.
So the Lakers now have their 1A. Luka will be their 1A for the next decade. And I think as these teams are going to look at their current 1As and be like, yeah, I think that guy's more of a 1B. And as some of these guys get,
God forbid,
or a 2,
you're not allowed
outright.
to say that to them. But it's like, you're more of a 1B.
Right.
It's not a second. It's not secondary. It's 1B.
Right.
And
so, but they're going to look internally. They're going to have some of these internal conversations, and they're going to look at the Ja Morants of the world, or Giannis as he ages, or you could go through any number of these all-stars, all NBA type players, and their teams are going to have some of these tough conversations, and some of those tough conversations are going to land, especially as these players are still suffering the whiplash of realizing, shit, I'm not just going to get the max every year.
Like, you just saw what Jimmy Butler did when he realized it, and the Suns started freaking out so bad that they pissed off one of their only good players in Kevin Durant, because they're like, well, shit, I mean, Bradley Beal won't let us trade him. Do we have to trade KD?
Right.
Let's not ask him or talk to him about it first. Let's let him find out through the media. I think this will go great.
KD famously doesn't hold grudges and is not really all that online.
Yeah.
So the rest of the league are going to look at some of their again, current 1A players. They're going to get slotted down to 1B, 2, whatever we're going to slot them at. And the Lakers are going to have that opportunity to slide in there and get that player and now properly slot them into 1A, 1B, 2, whatever we want to call it. And they're going to be set. And I think here's where the Lakers, I understand why they moved so quickly to trade for Mark. Should I just give my tinfoil take?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason you're beholden to journalistic responsibility. I say fire it away.
All right. Well, this is purely speculation, purely a theory. I wish I had my tinfoil in this office still. I'm gonna get that. I'm just gonna have tinfoil on standby.
Can someone comment Anthony some tinfoil? Just market tinfoil budget. It's so he has it ready for next time. Office tinfoil, the fancy kind.
So my theory is that the Lakers wanted to appear to appease Luka Doncic, who wanted a center right when he got to the Lakers. Unfortunately, the Lakers traded a center to get Luka, and they didn't have a center before that. And my, again, purely speculative tinfoil hat theory that I have is that Rob looked around and didn't see a center that he was all that thrilled about having to give up a first rounder for. I don't even think he necessarily knew who Mark Williams was. And the Hornets call him up and they're like, hey, you need a center. Look at this guy's per 36 numbers. This guy could be that center. And Rob was like, yeah, I know. Man, Luka's really pressuring me too. Tell you what, let's agree to a trade right up against the deadline. And if if it doesn't
go
work
ahead
out,
and take your time on sending them out for the physicals, though. We could get that done after the deadline. Not a big deal.
I'm sure we won't run into any kind of snafus here. We're fine. We're fine. Because here's the thing: the Lakers didn't want to trade for Robert Williams because of his medicals. Didn't want to trade for Lonzo Ball because of his medicals. You could run through the litany of players that the Lakers over the years have just been like, they didn't want to draft Cam Whitmore because of his medicals. They've been so terrified by every player's medicals to this point. And for some reason, we're like, bring us Mark Williams. Sure, he's played like a third of the games that he should have played to this point of the season. And yeah, he sat out more than half of the games that he should have played this actual year. But bring him on over here. Yeah, we'll send out Dalton and we'll send out a first. You want a pick swap? Fuck it. Pick swap too. And they send out all that stuff. And then somehow we're like shocked at, man, did you know this guy has a bad back? What? Foot problems too? Really?
This would go to your theory of Rob not knowing who he is.
Right. and then like, then they kind of looked at him and was like, oh shucks, we can't negotiate.
Luka showed up to their meeting and he's like, yeah, like I'm not going to try and do a Luka accent. He's like, I'd love, to have like a Mark Williams type to try and play alongside. And Rob is like, I definitely know who that is. Let me see what I can do.
Do you think he Googled Mark Williams and was like, oh, actually,
Luka, this is how committed I am. I'm calling the Hornets right now with you on speakerphone. You know what? I'm going to get the trade done. This is how much we love you here in LA. And then he's at his office desk. He's like, wait, he's played how many games?
Well, because the Hornets are still under the impression or still saying publicly that the Lakers pursued Mark Williams heavily. And Rob is saying that the Hornets came to him with Mark Williams. So my theory is that the Lakers traded for Mark Williams, never actually believed that they were going to keep the guy, but they wanted to appear to Luka serious in their pursuit and serious in their willingness to bring in a center.
Yeah.
And then it just happened to fall through, and then they became the Drake gif of like, oh,
just happened to, yes,
man, shoot,
as if they had no control over that.
Yeah, right.
Again, like I'm not saying that you're right. I'm just saying that this sort of very much aligns with my idea of something Rob Pelinka would do. Yeah. And so I'm inclined to believe it.
I swear I traded for Heath Ledger.
Like it's so dastardly, and like it would make sense why the Hornets are so pissed off and giving Rob's rep. Like it's like I have a hard time not believing this now.
It's now headcanon.
It's probably not true. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
But
it's headcanon.
Part of me is always going to believe it.
But isn't that how conspiracies go? Like you just like enough of it lines up and you're like, huh, maybe we didn't land on the moon.
Yeah, they had another medical inspector on the grassy knoll, and they.
So anyway, let's go ahead and move on. After I just realized we've been going for 40 minutes, and I want to try to figure out what we expect of this team here moving forward. They pick up action tomorrow already. We're recording this on a Tuesday.
Against who?
Huh?
Against who?
It's so awkward.
After the Hornets were like, yeah, no big deal. There's big stuff going on in Los Angeles. We'll reschedule the game. You guys don't worry about it.
They help the Lakers out, and
we'll fly back out. We'll fly back out. It's not a big deal.
So the Lakers play the Charlotte Hornets Wednesday night, which kicks off the second quote unquote half of the season. How do you look at things, by the way? Do you look at the second half of the season numerically or based on the after the All-Star break?
I mean, this feels like the second half of the season just because I mean, I'm sure I like you and probably every other NBA fan. I know it's not mathematically the second half, but it's, we're humans. We're prone to like dividing things based on dividing lines. And, it's very easy to be like, okay, we had a week off. Now it's the second half. Just like, when you're in school and you're like, okay, I'm halfway done with the year when you get Christmas break. And it's like, well, not exactly, but it feels like the halfway point of the year.
Yeah. Was that closer to the end or the beginning of?
I think closer to the beginning because the second half, I mean, the second half of the year always felt longer.
Felt really long. All right. So I made the mistake because somebody asked me what kind of record I see for the Lakers here wrapping up. They play 30 games and I said 23-7 because I'm terrible at math. And I what I meant before I did really poor math was to say that I think they'll just keep on winning at basically the same rate that they have won to this point.
Wait, how many games do they have left?
30.
23 plus 7 is 30. Doesn't that?
No. But I what I needed to do was instead of so I needed to they've won 55.
Oh, I thought that you were saying it just didn't mathematically line up. I'm like, wait, no, you're wrong. Like that does add up to 30.
No, went through that too because somebody was got that math wrong while I was doing it again live on the air. So
it
the
only
Lakers
took me 15 seconds to figure that out.
The Lakers have won 61.5% of their games to this point. And so if you have 30 games to go and you win them at like a 61.5% rate times 0.615, that means you won about 18 and a half games. So in that kind of ballpark. So what I should have said when somebody asked, what do I think, how many games do I think the Lakers are going to win from here on out? I should have said about 18 or so games, and that would have them finish at 50 wins this year. And I think that's probably still where I come out, not 23 wins, because the second half of their season is also pretty difficult. So, like, where do you have the Lakers finishing up, or how do you have them finishing up?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably about where you do, or maybe a little lower, like a game or two. Not because I think that the team is, demonstrably worse or whatever for this season with Luka. Obviously, I don't. Like, I think that they're about the same, if not having a higher ceiling. But I think that adjusting to playing with Luka is going to be a real adjustment with someone that is as heliocentric as he is, and he's certainly tried to take a back seat the first couple games a little
And
bit
it's so
at times.
clunky.
And it's exactly like that's also a hiccup, is like, a guy trying to play a role that he's not necessarily best at because he's being deferential and trying to be a good teammate. And so I do think that there's going to be some hiccups. And I also think that we've become conditioned to expect the Lakers to come out of the All-Star break like their hair is on fire the last 2 years because they've had to.
They've had to.
And
Yeah.
I wonder how much sort of human nature and the nature of the NBA and just LeBron being a year older and Luka still working his way back from injury contributes to, like, let's just try and go 500. Let's try and stay in the upper half of the playoff bracket. I don't know exactly where that breaks down math-wise off the top of my head, but, let's try and stay in the top 4. But not necessarily, like, we don't need to try and push for 2 or something like that, because we want to make sure that LeBron and Luka are healthy going into the playoffs. Like, we don't have to go all out to try and avoid the play-in or get home court advantage in the play-in or whatever it may be. Like, I don't think that they're going to put their foot down on the gas quite as hard as they've had to the last couple of years coming out of the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a natural adjustment period too, where, like, I think, again, I'm not saying like, oh, there's only one ball, LeBron and Luka can't play together, but I think that there are going to be some growing pains as part of that process. And that's not to say that they can't still be really good this year, but I think there's also going to be some defensive stuff that this team has to figure out, because,
their starting center is still Jackson Hayes.
Yeah. And even as well as they played pre-Luka trade while AD was out with Jackson Hayes as their starting center, it's like, again, if you have Luka, Austin, and LeBron out there, you're going to be able to outscore teams probably. But that's also, again, you're getting back to the problem that you had at the beginning of the year, where it's like D'Lo, Austin, LeBron, Rui, and then instead of AD cleaning it up, you're asking Jackson Hayes to.
Yeah.
And LeBron's been good on defense, but again, he's not someone that I'm like, like he's going to go lock people down. Like, he's been a fine team defender, I think. But, and maybe he can amp up his effort there a little bit even more over the second half, just not having to do as much on offense. But I would imagine he saves more of that for the playoffs.
I kind of think he has to do.
He's going to have to
defensively
put more energy on defense, just because he's one of the few guys capable of it.
Right. Because, and this is part of the reason why I think Dorian should start sooner rather than later, just because, like, you can have, like, once you've built up enough of a lead, then you can really kind of come over the top and have Rui finishing plays.
Yeah.
But if you start that way and he doesn't finish well right off the top, now there's no real way to elevate your game at that point, where I think you're better off playing your kind of steadier player there between Dorian and Rui. I think they've also been kind of reluctant.
Hey, like, LeBron's great. Obviously, LeBron can still turn it up on defense, but he should not be your switchiest defender on the floor, to start games.
Right. So, yeah, I think they'll probably open up. Again, their schedule, the back half is tough. Like, that was part of the reason when I said, like, when I gave my number, people were like, you're way more optimistic than we are, because they have some stretches here where
you should stick with it. 23-7. Okay.
23-7 is a lot. Like, I regret it. I regretted it immediately. See, this is why, like, coming optimism, like, optimism doesn't come naturally to me. So the Lakers open up with Wednesday, Thursday. They play Charlotte and Portland. Should win both of those. And then they play Denver, which doesn't normally go well for them. And then they have Dallas. And yeah, Dallas won't have AD, Gafford, or Lively. But Dallas has also beaten the Lakers shorthanded earlier this season. And the guys that they do have been playing insanely hard since the trade.
You know who else I think is probably going to play insanely hard in that game?
All right, fair. I could see
I'm
him
not saying
scoring
Kobe's
like
scoring
55
record
in a
is in
loss,
jeopardy.
though.
I'm not saying Kobe's scoring record is in jeopardy. I'm just saying I would not faint, you know?
I like how we say it's Kobe's record because there's no tape of Wilt.
Well, the Wilt one is not going to happen. That's never happening again. Nobody's getting 100. But like the one that someone theoretically could maybe get to is Kobe's. You know,
I don't think
even there it's pretty hard to see it. But like
I think
get close. We've seen guys get 70. You know,
I think Luka, of the players that like could do it, I've said this before, by the way. This is before Luka was a Laker, but like of the players currently going who I think could get to Wilt's number, I think Luka is the best suited. He gets fouled a ton and he makes threes. Which if he gets really hot and he gets to the foul line a lot and scores
and he's always going to have a mismatch no matter who's guarding him. He's either going to be stronger or he's going to be quicker, you know, or he's going to be, you know, like just sort of more mobile. Like there's not a guy that you're like, oh man, that's a natural Luka defender.
Yeah. All right. So they go Denver, Dallas, Minnesota, the Clippers twice. New Orleans is, you know, but like that's their stretch. Then they go New York, Boston, Brooklyn sucks, but then you got Milwaukee, Denver, Phoenix, who also sucks. Then you got San Antonio, who probably tanking at that point. But then again, Denver, Milwaukee, Chicago sucks. Orlando, good. Indiana should be all right. Chicago sucks. It's just like there are certainly winnable games, and there's plenty of them. But to get to 23 wins and only 7 losses, that's a lot. But anyway, what would you like be disappointed by?
I mean, anything below 500, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if they can go, I mean, again, I'm not saying they're going to go 15-15, but if they can go 15-15, work out the kinks, go into the playoffs strong, I'm totally fine with that. Yeah. I think anything below that at that point, it's like, okay, that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I think I would set my bar a little higher. I want them to finish the season with home court advantage in the first round. You know, like
I think that should be the goal for sure.
Yeah. Well, they currently have it.
To be honest, that's the only thing they really have to play for, because it's, you know, that again, when you're saying 23-7 or something, it's like, well, what's the impetus for them to go that hard for 23-7? It's like, well, if they have to do it to maintain home court, then in the first round, then there's a real advantage there. But if they start to, you know, if they start slow and it's like, okay, well, what really is the difference between like the 5th and 6th seed? Then I don't expect that. It's just human nature. I don't expect them to go as hard.
Yeah. The other thing too is that Luka usually just racks up wins, and when he's healthy, and
it's sort of just a cheat code. You know, it's like you're going to have a good offense that night at the very least. You know, will him and LeBron get back on defense on every single possession? No, but hopefully one of them more often than not. You know, and you just go from there.
Yep. All right. Let's really quickly answer a super comment here. And then I was able to find that video just in case you hadn't seen it before. But first, let's get to this one. Brandon Oamang writes, can Braun take a $14 million a year pay cut and sign Nickeil Alexander-Walker to the full MLE, then trade Gabe Max and DK for Claxton and re-sign Dorian Finney-Smith and Hayes? Then you have Luka, Reeves, Dorian, LeBron, NC. Who's NC? Oh, Claxton with Goodwin, Alexander Walker, Vanderbilt, Rui, and JH. Oh, Hayes as your roster next year. I like where a lot of that is heading, but like when you started off with, can LeBron take 15 mil less per year? that makes it tough. I do think
he can. He could afford to, but will he? I sort of doubt it.
I do think he's open to a haircut next season if he opts out. He was open to it last year, reportedly. Not even reportedly. Rich Paul said so. Like, if like it wasn't even like
necessarily usually do reportedly. He just sort of like calls up Shams and it's like, here's what we're willing to take. Just let him know.
And so, if that's what he was willing to do last year to help the Lakers get Clay or Harden or DeMar or hilariously Jonas, then I've reported this as much, and the Lakers have kind of whispered about this as well internally, is like, if he feels the chance that he could win a championship next year, as soon as next year, with Bronny also on the roster there, they think that he would be willing to work with them to make that happen. What extent and all that stuff, what figure that we might land on, that remains to be seen. But look, it's also, I've also talked myself into, well, hey, maybe Kobe will take less. And then I think he got like a 2-year, $48 million contract coming off of the Achilles, and it's like, they're not. and a lot of things went differently there. All right, let's wrap this up by showing you this, Harrison. I don't know if you've seen it before. I removed the audio just for copyright purposes. Because I'm so sick of dealing with that on YouTube. But here's the actual clip, so we'll have to talk our way through it. Here's a biker. He's going through the woods.
Real. That's not real. That bear is not really there. That's CGI. That's
I don't know,
that's
man.
Edited. There's no way.
I don't know if we still do CGI that good in 2025.
That wasn't that good. I don't think that's real. I
don't know, man. But anyway, picture that. And
that looked like N64 clip art. Like
the TikTok is like imagine like running from a bear, pedaling away from a bear with Vanessa Carlton playing in your noise canceling headphones.
Like,
making my way down.
Put on the Push It playlist. Like I gotta put Alexa, play DMX.
Right. Siri, play Linkin Park. Make me go faster.
Like us.
On a scale of like how high would that rank? Is like what? How would you handle that situation?
I would probably die. I just accept that. Like I don't think I'm outrunning that bear.
Well, you're not outrunning it. You might have a chance on a bike if you're going downhill.
I don't think I do. I don't believe in myself. I think so. What I've heard is like they're like, if it's brown, get down, I think is the thing. And so like if it's a black bear, you're supposed to jump up and try and scare it because they're like smaller and sort of more cowardly. And so like brown bear, you're supposed to get down and hope it thinks you're dead. Like sort of like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant,
Yeah.
And
worked
so
out well for him.
Not that well for a while.
No, I know. That was a joke.
Yeah,
I mean, he won an Oscar, so.
And then the bear ate his kid. It's messed up.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah, that bear was his biggest hater. He just like the bear messed him up, ate his kid.
Well, he also has that bear to thank for an Oscar, though. So, like,
yeah,
really, we are our worst enemies. All right. That I think is going to do it here on that high note for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Lakers are right back in action tomorrow. So Raj and I will be there to break down what we see from that game. Kudos really quickly to Lonnie Walker for making his way back into the league. That was good to see. Always going to be pulling for Lonnie. He is now a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. Do you think Lonnie is going to have some is going to be like shell shocked? He's going to walk in there. He's like, all right, hell yeah. Didn't the Sixers get like Paul George? And then they already have like Embiid and Maxi's been playing really well. Like things are going to go great. Right. And then he's going to walk into like the facility. And like, hold on, what happened? Like, well, you guys are where in the standings?
Paul George said he's working from home the rest of the season.
Can you even work from home in the NBA? Is that a thing? All right, but yeah, Raj and I will be there to break down Hornets Lakers tomorrow night. And until then, and until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Harrison Fagan. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Subscribe, rate, review, like button, subscribe buttons, all of that good stuff. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow.